So we thought for the first session, Daniella and I have known each other for a while and we've been in business for a similar amount of time, but we've not actually collaborated. So lockdown has given a great opportunity for us to come together and look at how we can serve a wider audience. So for initially, we thought it's best that we start sharing our own personal journeys and lessons in business, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. And then the following sessions will be more focused on specific areas of business.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything you want to add to that?
No, we'll just jump in.
Okay. So I'll go first, and then Daniella will share her journey with you. So, who am I? For those who don't really know my journey. Okay, cool. So 7 years in social housing, running alongside that. For those who recognise First Class Youth as an organisation, I was a partner and co-director. So I left my full-time job to go full-time into First Class Youth. So that was my first step from leaving a job and going into business full-time. And that was youth and community engagement. Then in 2010, Conservative came into power, if those who recall, after the recession in 2008. A lot changed in terms of budget. A lot of our clients were public sector. So we really failed to look beyond the horizon and look at the risks. So this was one of the first lessons I learned in business in terms of always looking ahead. And risk assessments, because our business model was really dependent upon public sector. So when that changed, I launched Engage Training and Consultancy to go in a different direction, and that was to be really performing the same services but in a consultancy format rather than delivering on the ground. So that's when I launched Engage, and I still have that business to date. I've sat on 2 boards for social housing providers, made the decision to step down last year because I'd taken on too much, which is a common trait of an entrepreneur. But that gave me a real strategic insight into the housing industry. So I've gone from frontline and then into a strategic position there. International trainer, so I'm an associate of a training company. So I've had a lot of different training. I'll go through in more detail some of the clients, but I've been doing that for 10 years now. So this is an example for those who remember C&A. If you do, you're showing your age. They left the UK in 2001, and this was a client. They're still very, very big in Europe. So their head office is in Dusseldorf in Germany. So this is one example of a training program I ran. I worked with them for 18 months, cultural orientation. So they went through a huge restructure and recognized that people were coming into the business without knowing the history. So they wanted a fun and interactive training program that helped people to see some of the key milestones that the company have been through. So that was a great project. But after 18 months of flying to Germany every month, I kind of got a bit fed up of that and handed it over on the trainer model. I've also trained law firms, so Shearman and Sterling, top law firm. This was in Paris, but I've done it in other cities across the globe, and that's diversity and inclusion, which has meant adapting to the different laws in different countries, which has been probably the most challenging element of international travel, understanding the different elements of culture and how the law changes. But that's another example. One of my favourites, so I've trained a company, Lafarge Holcim, who are a French company with their head office in Lagos, Nigeria. So this was a conference with their top 100 leaders. So they'd merged Lafarge and Holcim and needed to really create that cohesiveness amongst the managers. So I went out, I've been out there 3 times now and delivered training for them. So this is just to give you an understanding of the breadth, because sometimes people often see me as a trainer or an estate agent without recognising that there's a lot more that's gone on behind the scenes. So these are just a handful of the clients that I've worked with. So you can see there's an array from public sector to across private. Journey continued. I've also built a property investment portfolio, which I'm still growing, and that's my pension, as I don't have an official one. Award-winning member of the Professional Speakers Academy. So a couple of years ago, I recognised that speaking, there's a skill to it. And a lot of us in business, it's important that we have our personal brand, and speaking is an excellent way to achieve that. So I wanted to really sharpen up my skills. So I joined this academy. It's been tough, but I've been through it and now won awards as a result of it. So that's a skill that I take forward. Bring It Home, which is training for a state agency. So I launched that last year, and that was really bridging the gap between my estate agency experience and training. And most people know that I had an estate agency business, which I sold in December of last year. I always intended to do so. I set up the business with the end in mind to sell and stuck to the plan. So that's really like a whiz tour of my journey. This is a few photos of the Bring It Home training tools, so you can get an idea of what that looks like. And you'll notice my training style is very interactive, very fun, because I believe that people learn and engage more whilst they're having fun. And this was the team. So sold the business and the team transferred over to the new owner. I miss them dearly, but I don't miss some of the management challenges that come with running a business, but we can talk about that later. So what am I doing now? So coaching, training and speaking, primarily for entrepreneurs, helping entrepreneurs to become unstuck from their businesses, which is a common trait, which Marcy has just shared. We get caught in the operational aspects and fail to work on the business enough. So that's my role now, and achieving more success in doing so. So that's a whiz tour of me, and over to Danielle, and we'll take questions after.
So, hi, I'm Daniella, also known as She's the Boss, as I am the founder of She's the Boss. My journey today, I started my first business in 2007 that was called Aspire for You. It was an event management and youth training organization. I initially co-founded it with 3 other ladies. By 2008, I was running it alone. Lots of lessons were learnt in that journey, which I will discuss a little bit further later. Registered officially as a community interest company in 2009, which wasn't necessarily the best decision, but was the best decision for me at the time. In hindsight, I realized that I probably went down the wrong road for a number of reasons. I grew the business from just me to a team of 8. And in terms of a picture of my team, you won't see one because I don't miss them dearly. Some of them I do, but again, the concept of managing people is not something that I personally enjoy. So I'm going to explain what I'm doing a little bit more now, later, but it doesn't include managing staff because it's not something that I particularly enjoyed. Whilst running Aspire for You, I co-founded the Alternative Wedding and Events Group in 2013 with my business partner, Trucio, who continued that on in 2015 because I had a baby and realized I didn't want to be out every weekend at wedding fairs. Even though I loved the idea of organizing weddings and events, in practicality it didn't work. So he continued with that and I went on to do some other things, including in 2017 launching She's the Boss International. And also in 2018 I became a senior business advisor for Enterprise Europe Network. I will mention a little bit more what that entails shortly. And keeping with the first class theme, I am currently a trustee for First Class Legacy, providing board support and direction for the charity. I'm also a committee member for West Midlands Women's Voices, which is a steering committee funded by West Midlands Combined Authority to provide the voice of women in the region and provide events and support for women. So with running Aspire for You, because of the growth of the business, I, for some reason, at the time I wasn't necessarily sure what that reason was, I was awarded Birmingham Young Professional of the Year Award, as well as the Inspire Young Entrepreneur Award from Trinity Mirror Media. And I say for some reason, because at the time, I was really dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome. And even though the business was growing, and I was doing what at the time it was amazing, some of the things that I was doing, I couldn't reconcile the idea of me, Daniella, from an inner city background, running an organization and being awarded these awards. It didn't sit well with me at all. So as much as you see me smiling in those pictures, inside I was panicking, thinking, oh my gosh, somebody's going to know that I'm a fraud and I don't necessarily deserve these awards. I've worked through it now. Now I know that I did deserve them, but just to give you a bit of background behind those pictures. And during the time of running Aspire For You, some of the key achievements that I had, in addition to supporting a lot of the young people that we were working with, over the 7 or 8 years, we supported over 2,000 young people, either directly through our training programs, through our development opportunities, and through our showcasing opportunities, and also indirectly through the events that we held. We worked with lots of young people. I also was able to secure sponsorship for our events and programs from big brands, including Subway, HMV, Caribbean brands, if anyone knows, Bigger, Duns River Grace, Nourishment, and realized I was really good at sponsorship on one hand. On the other hand, was also really good at writing funding applications. So within a very short period of time, I was able to secure funding from Heritage Lottery Fund, Awards for All, Reaching Communities, and a variety of other trusts that came to a total of around £250,000, which sounds like a fantastic thing, but actually it really hindered my kind of entrepreneurial abilities because I was comfortable, because I knew whatever happened, I was getting paid. And it wasn't until a few years into that process that I realized that funded income isn't counted on your turnover at Companies House. So even though the business was generating what I thought was thousands of pounds in revenue, if you went to Companies House, it looked like we was only making a couple of £1,000s. So that was a big learning curve for me. When I recognized this, one of the key things that I did was decided, actually, I need more understanding of the frameworks of business. Because really, I started business and I didn't know what I was doing. I just decided, right, I want to start business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Let's go. And I went. Realized, obviously, after a couple of years, it doesn't really work like that. For me personally, I needed to understand the frameworks. So I went to university and did a master's in creative enterprise, which really opened my eyes, but not enough, because I then later joined the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program in 2013, which is like a mini MBA to help really expand my understanding of business. And then in 2018, I graduated from Aston Business School, which is what this picture is, with my MBA, specializing in advanced strategy and innovation. So I suppose quite differently to Melissa, who went out and actually learned business, I went down the academic route and learned business that way. Which, to be honest, when I think about it, I think the imposter syndrome impacted my decision to take that route as well, because I felt that actually to be a business person, I need to have the paperwork. I've now realized that's not necessarily the case, but I wouldn't necessarily change the direction I took, because some of the things, particularly that I learned on the MBA and the Goldman Sachs program, more so than my master's, which I don't think was that great, to be honest, have really stood me in good stead for what I do now. So She's the Boss. She's the Boss originally came about through me doing research for my MBA dissertation on the barriers and challenges faced by women in business. Whilst embarking on that research process, I was interviewing women in business and realizing that actually some of the stories that these women have to share are very powerful, and we're often kind of drip-fed a specific type of story of a successful entrepreneur. And actually, there's lots of small business owners and entrepreneurs that are amongst us that have really overcome huge and significant challenges. So I asked some of the ladies that I'd interviewed if they mind me sharing the interviews on YouTube. They said yes, and She's the Boss was born. I've been doing it since 2017, and I've interviewed over 60 women in business from a range of different backgrounds, different industries, from different countries in the world. And my business consultancy, She's the Boss, was created in 2018. I initially started as Genus Enterprise Consultant, very creative using my surname, but realized that the She's the Boss brand represented me much more effectively. So I changed the business name to She's the Boss and have been trading under that since. So the work I do with Enterprise Europe Network has really also provided me with an excellent understanding of how small to medium-sized enterprises operate. Whilst She's the Boss consultancy focuses a little bit more on startups and early stage and pre-startup businesses, the work I've been doing with Enterprise Europe Network is more focused on established SMEs. focusing on supporting them through innovation and strategy to grow and to enter new markets. So between the two, between the work I do with She's the Boss and Enterprise Europe Network, I have covered a vast spectrum of industries, and you can see from some of the pictures on the screen that includes recruitment companies, marketing companies, PR, skincare, health and beauty, and also really random stuff, including art fabrications, laser cutters, health and safety consultancies. So stuff that I wouldn't necessarily have done if I was just going out and looking for clients on my own, but has really given me a really good grounding in the methods that I've developed to support all businesses, because I've been able to test them with pre-startup, startup, and established SMEs. And I really enjoyed it, most importantly, I think. So my current focus with She's the Boss is supporting ambitious, often female entrepreneurs, but I have a few male clients as well, to start and grow profitable, sustainable, systems-led businesses. So it's interesting because obviously Marcy mentioned at the beginning the issue with getting ill and not being able to, I suppose, be in the business, running the business. That's one of the key things that I focus on with the clients that I work with. What happens if you get ill and you're not able to run your business, and making sure that the systems and processes are in place and are documented so that your business can continue to run with or without you. Oop, I just jumped ahead. Melissa?
So what we'll do now is share our top 3 lessons in business and then open it out for you to ask questions, because I'm sure you may have an array of different questions. That's prodding you to get your questions ready. So are you okay to click, Daniella? Okay. So it's been 12 years since I've been in business now, and as you've seen, it's covered an array of different areas, from training, consultancy, coaching, running businesses hands-on. And when I start to reflect yesterday, actually, to look at what were the 3 biggest lessons that I've learned along the way, and I'd say the number 1 lesson is to start with the end in mind. Now, for those of you who know Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, that's one of his habits, is to begin with the end in mind. Also, Michael E. Gerber, who I'd recommend, the E-Myth, the author of the E-Myth, talks about if you don't have an end in mind, then you're almost destined for chaos. And along my journey in previous businesses where I didn't have the end in mind, that is exactly what happened, was chaos when things went wrong along the way. Or, you know, eventually as business owners, there's days when you do feel as though you run out of steam sometimes. It can be a bit overwhelming. And if you don't have a clear end in mind to keep you going and keep you pushing, then that is when a lot of businesses begin to phase out. An analogy, it's almost like jumping into a black cab at New Street Station and telling the driver to just drive, and you'll see where you're going along the way. If you don't know what the end destination is, then how will you know when you've got there? Or how can you measure your progress? So in the last business that I had, as in the estate agency, Amity Properties, I started that with a very, very clear end in mind, and that was to grow the business, and literally started it with 0 clients, and I mean 0. I'd sat there on day 1, opened the doors, and then went through my phone book and phoned everybody I knew to say I've opened up an estate agency. I'm not advocating that that is the way to start a business, but it worked for me. But because I knew that my intention was to grow and then sell 5 years down the line, which it was 5.5 years, that's what kept me going. Throughout all the legislation changes, throughout all the challenges that we faced in our industry, I always knew there was an end goal. And I did, wrapped up and sold in December. Was it an easy process? No, because I went through an emotional battle in the final year and started to question whether it was the right thing to do. However, now, given the current situation we're all in, I'm thanking God for that decision. I'm thanking God that I went through with it, because I would have been in chaos now. So that's my number 1 lesson. Start with the end in mind. Know what your exit is. There's a range of different exit strategies. It could be for you a sale of the business. It could be about legacy, so passing it down to your children. It could be an asset sale, so not the business in its entirety. Whatever your model is, have that in mind, and then all of your plans and your strategies should be working towards that model. If you don't have that end in mind, then you won't know how to shape and structure your business to achieve what you want to at the end of it. So that's my lesson number one.
So I echo everything that Melissa just said in regards to starting with the end in mind. I certainly didn't start with my end in mind when I started my business. And what if I could go back and give myself a talking to, one of the first pieces of advice I would give to younger me would be to think big. And I say this specifically because I think sometimes as small business owners, we look at some of these kind of bigger business and we're intimidated and think that we can't achieve the same levels of success as them. And because we may not necessarily be as confident in our abilities, or even think that our business is on par with some of the bigger establishments, we tend to think quite small, and we don't, as they say, if you aim for the moon, you might reach the stars. I think I got that in the right order for a change. And in thinking small, what then tends to happen is you're not aiming high enough. So any progress that you make is always going to be stunted. And I think one of the key things for me was I didn't necessarily believe that I could do a lot of the things that I actually had the abilities to do. And as my career has progressed and I've seen some really successful people that, and this is going to sound quite conceited, but I'm sure the same applies to you all. I've seen people that are making money that are not necessarily doing it in a way that I agree with, or that I don't think is professional, or that is even on a par with some of the businesses or business owners that I know that are making far less money. And that's because they're ambitious and they're not letting any limitations stop them from really aiming high. And this is something that's really come to the fore for me in the last few months. So I explained that I do the She's the Boss interviews. And whilst I love doing the kind of local entrepreneurs, the people within my networks, one of the key things that I wanted to do was also to look at interviewing people in other countries and who run quite big businesses. And even within the UK, people that are really much more established than myself. And for ages, there was a few kind of people on my hit list, and I kept saying, "Oh, I'm going to contact them. I'm going to get in touch," but not yet, because I'm not at that stage yet. I don't have enough hits on the YouTube channel. I don't have enough followers on Instagram. And somebody said to me, "What's the worst they're going to do? They're going to say no." And actually, it was one of my clients, and my clients had said to me that actually, you're always telling me to think big and to not put limitations on yourself. And the worst that can happen is someone will say no, but you're not putting that into practice yourself. And so I went after some of these big named interview participants, and they said yes immediately. And this thing that I'd created, this big blockage around, like, I can't, they're not in, nobody asked how many hits I had on my YouTube. Nobody asked how many followers I had on Instagram. They heard what I was trying to do and just said yes. And I wish that I had taken that approach with the first business more so. I did it with sponsorship. So as I said, I got some quite big name sponsors, but with the commercial side of the business, because it was a social enterprise, I didn't necessarily take those same steps. I was very intimidated by brand names. They're not going to want me to organize their event because they don't know who I am. So I'm not going to approach them. So for me, a huge lesson, and a lesson that I would want to impart on you guys, is to think big. So really, when you're thinking about your business and what you want to achieve with your business, whatever it is that you're thinking of, double it. Think bigger, double that. And if it's then you're thinking that you want to have a team of 5, no, maybe you need to have a team of 20. Aim for the team of 20, and maybe you get 10, which is more than the 5, even if you don't hit the 20, but actually you might hit the 20. And I think, yeah, for me, that's an important, it forms part of the core basis of how I support my clients, telling them always think big. That's my first lesson.
Thank you. All right, my lesson number 2 is focus on serving being the key word. Focus on serving your clients. And I mean, I'm sure you'll all agree, and we can ask you shortly, nobody likes being sold to. We've all had those LinkedIn requests where, you know, people are requesting you and then they're immediately trying to sell something to you. The fact is, people buy from those who they know, like, and trust. So if you're constantly chasing clients and trying to sell something, you're actually probably doing damage and driving them away and doing damage to your brand. So the focus should be really on serving your clients and adding value to them. And then from that, the sales will come. One of the examples, as I was thinking yesterday, was when, again, within the estate agency business, I wanted to do things quite different and position us as a boutique style agent. And one of our values was really around the way that we delivered. So it was the word amity meant friendly relations, and I wanted to have that friendly ethos, and not be like the commercial big boys in the way that they did things when it was all about statistics and numbers and targets. Ours was more, the focus was on service, and then the numbers came in as a result. So one of the things that we did, and this is like thinking outside of the box and thinking bigger, as Daniella's just alluded to, it was a Christmas and we hired out. I had a crazy idea and my team got used to me after a while, but I'd come out with these crazy ideas. I'd probably get an idea from a book or watch something that gave me an insight. So we hired out a cinema screen, which seated 96 people. And I said, right, we're hiring out the whole screen and we are inviting all of our landlords. This was on the letting side of the business, landlords and client, their families. We then provided them with popcorn, which was branded, obviously, branded popcorn, drinks and sweets. And we showed them it was the nativity. So it was a private setting. It gave me an opportunity to speak to them, welcome everybody, give that added value, share some insight into where we were as a business, as they were our clients, and give them that experience. And that cost me about £1,000. But that, I'd rather have done something like that than put £1,000 into Facebook ads or marketing that would have been attracting cold traffic, because our business was really based on referral. So by treating our clients differently and giving them that added value and focusing on serving them more, I was then attracting a lot more business as a result. So my client retention was extremely high and my referral rate was high, which meant I didn't have to spend huge budgets on marketing and advertising. So that's one thing that I always now tell my clients: how can you serve your clients better? Clearly, in order to serve your clients well, you need to know who your clients are. That's another area that a lot of people haven't got that clear definition of their ideal client. That is another workshop that we will cover in another seminar on another day, because that's a whole workshop in itself. So you need to know your client and then find out everything you can about your client, find out what your client likes, what their interests are, and then look at creative ways of serving them in a different way. So that would be my lesson number 2.
And just to add to that, I think what's important is always having a client or customer centered view of the business, not a business centered view. And I think a lot of small business owners focus on business first and customers, clients second. And actually, if you flip that and just focus on doing everything you can to get to know your customer and to add value to your customer, the business will obviously grow. Whereas if you're spending time just focusing on the business and getting caught up in the products and services that you want to offer, you may find that whatever your value proposition misses the target audience that you're going for, because you're focusing on the business and what you do and how you do it, and not who you're doing it for and whether they even want it. And I think there's a lot of businesses that think that their business isn't a very good business because they're not connecting with the right customer, and it's actually because they're having a business-centered view, not a customer-centered view.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
They can't. I can, yes.
So my second piece of advice is to take action. So it's great having this kind of big vision and thinking big and I can do anything and etc. But if you're not actually going to get up and do anything, then it's not going to amount to anything. And for me, one of the key things that I've noticed with a lot of the people that I've come into contact with and worked with, if they're able to get that think big bit down, they're not necessarily always able to get the take action bit. And therefore, that's where the business stops progressing. So for me, as I said, in my business, my first business, in certain areas, I was thinking big. In other areas, I wasn't. What I was doing was taking action, but not strategic action. So what I probably should have put in there is take strategic action. So I was doing stuff, and I'm sure that if you run your own business, you've been in this position before, where you're doing stuff, you're like a busy fool, they call it, and you're just going, doing things, but it's not actually taking you to the end point. As Melissa said in the first bit, everything you should be doing should be leading to a particular point. So it's not about just taking action to take action's sake. It's taking strategic action that helps you, as it says in the picture behind my head, it helps you to bring your ideas to reality. So making sure that you've got a plan of action. I always recommend having dates associated with things, so that if you are somebody that gets easily distracted or procrastinates, set yourself deadlines. Work with accountability partners to help ensure that you consistently take strategic action to help move your business forward. And I think sometimes people put themselves off really achieving business success because they think big and then they get scared to take that action. And obviously I've given the example that was actually me. But you can't be afraid, and you don't want to use excuses as the reason why your business hasn't been a success. So how do you ensure that you get things done? You get things done by getting up and doing it, irrespective of whether it feels uncomfortable, whether you're scared of it. And one of the key things I always say is, everybody says, feel the fear and do it anyway. If you're scared of it, that means you should run towards it. That's where you should be taking the most action. Making sure that you're doing those specific things that scare you, that frighten you, that make you feel uncomfortable, because that's where you will see the biggest change in yourself and in your business. So take strategic, consistent action in the direction of the things that scare you the most, because that's where you will see the biggest change in your business.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, even when you do take action, there will always be a bigger mountain to climb. So once you have succeeded and conquered one, there'll always be another. So it's a continuous growth. But the more action you take, the more confident you get. And it's absolutely normal to have nerves, isn't it? I mean, everybody has nerves. If you're going to speak and deliver a keynote speech, you will have an element of butterflies. If you don't, then you're a bit too comfortable. And I think there'd be a problem there. But again, that's another topic.
Well, Beyonce says she still gets nervous before she goes on stage. So whenever I hear that, I always think, well, it makes sense, because Beyonce is like the biggest artist in the world. And if she's still nervous, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be as well. But she still gets up and she still does it. And I think that's the key point.
Yeah, definitely. We're human, which leads me on nicely to lesson number 3, be authentic. And if I'm totally honest, this has been an area that I've challenged with in business in the past, and I'm now working through more so. So what do I mean by being authentic? And that's about being real, being you, being true to who you are, true to what you do, true to what your services are, and true to your clients. And this is something that I found in the past, and I'll explain why. Serving a different type of client base, and I guess it's similar to your experience, Daniella, earlier on. I came from, I grew up in Handsworth, in a city area in Birmingham, and very much my roots are deeply rooted in that community. Then going on in life to then launch a business serving an area which was a total contrast. So my clients lived in £1 million plus houses in Little Aston, Four Oaks, etc. And I found that in serving them, I began to mirror my clients, because I thought, okay, people buy from who they know, like, and trust. I have to mirror them so that they would then be able to engage with me, and then they will instruct me. But I found that in the process, I was beginning to lose my identity. And approximately 18 months ago, I burnt out. And that was due to a number of factors. That was due to literally doing too much, running around, taking on too much. As I said, I stepped down from boards. I literally started to relinquish a lot of my responsibilities. But I believe that part of the reason as to why I burnt out was also linked to me trying to play too many roles. I was exhausting myself because I'd be in the business dealing with a different type of clientele. And yes, we have to adapt. I'm not saying, it's you communicate with everybody in the same manner. Yes, we have to adapt. However, don't lose yourself in the process. And I began to lose my identity, which was my world came crashing down at that point, and I had to go through a period of time of digging deep and reconnecting with my purpose and who I am, etc. As I've also said, people buy from who they know, like, and trust. So if you're not being authentic and you're not being true to who you are, then how can people connect with you? How will they know what you stand for? And that will show, unfortunately. And I see it quite often now with different people in our space, in terms of our industry and outside. And you're thinking they're presenting themselves in almost like a robotic way. If I look back at some of the videos I used to do 2-3 years ago, I cringed, because I'm thinking, that's not me. I'm talking like a robot, because I wanted to ensure that I came across in a particular way. So I'd say really dig deep. You have to know who you are to be authentic. You have to know your purpose, but this is the foundation of everything. If you don't know who you are, you don't know what your purpose is, and you're not authentic, then your business won't stand, because you are a part of that business. So that's a lesson that I've learned the hard way, and I'm still refining that now. So lesson number 3.
I agree with you, by the way. And we'll go into more about purpose and finding your why in the next webinar, which is on Thursday at 7.
Yeah.
My third piece of advice is to keep pushing. And this is kind of a buzz statement on Instagram, on social media, but it really, for me, is more than just a buzzword. So when I was running my first business, when, like I always say, if somebody had told me at the beginning of the process that all of the things that happened was going to happen, I probably wouldn't have actually proceeded with the business. In hindsight, all of the things that happened has made me the coach, the consultant, the business advisor that I am today, because pretty much every bad thing that can happen to you in business happened to me. So I already alluded to the fact that I started business with 3 other women. We were friends. We're no longer friends, so you can work that one out for yourself. I had staff members who sued me. I had somebody that sued me for £30,000. I had another staff member who I employed to work on developing commercializing a project that I had developed. This was after the lady had left that had sued me, who had been on the same project. This lady knew that, took the idea, the concept, went, formed her own business while she was working for me and getting paid, and secured funding to commercialize the product, or the project, sorry, that I'd been paying her to commercialize for me, and then just left in a kind of a ball of smoke, never to be seen again. I've had like literally every year for me had some really extreme highs. So obviously I mentioned the awards and different things, but some really significant lows. And I remember the period of when this lady was suing me and then this other lady was doing whatever she was doing. I remember some of my hair started to fall out. And I remember, so it's funny, Melissa, when you were saying about burnout, because I believe at that point I was in a phase of burnout. And the way it kind of manifested in me was I was having hair loss. So I remember very clearly putting my hand in my head and having like about this much of my hair just gone, and I could touch my scalp. And I always remember being in the office with my mom saying, this is too hard. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun anymore. And I remember my mom saying to me, well, then give up. And I was like, what? What? I can't give up. And, well, what are we going to do then? And I did obviously continue to keep pushing. In 2015, I was pregnant with my daughter. I had been on a program, Big Venture Challenge, to secure investment for my business, because I had recognized that the business was very much reliant on me, and I couldn't cope with it being reliant on me anymore because of the levels of stress and me running around and being this kind of busy fool and trying to do everything. Even though I had a team, I hadn't necessarily trained the team in anything that was more than surface. So they were doing some of the activities, but they weren't doing the things that I needed them to do to alleviate some of the stress that I was feeling. So I said, okay, I'm going to go on this program. I'm going to get some investment. I'm going to take on an operations manager who's going to help me map out all of the systems and processes. I'm going to take on a sales manager. They're going to do the sales, and it's going to be wonderful. I then found out I was pregnant. Even better, because this is going to align by the time the baby comes. I can take these people will be in post, and they will run everything, and I can go on maternity leave, and it's going to be great. And then My mum got taken into hospital in intensive care, was incredibly ill for several months. And I went to sign the deal for the investment. And before I even left the office, the investors called and said, actually, we need you to come back in 6 months and show us increase in sales. My mum was in intensive care in Nottingham. I was heavily pregnant. I knew that it was not possible. There was no way in the world I was going to be able to, over those 6 months, increase the sales, because I wasn't even going to be physically in the business. We've gone from 8 members of staff at that point to 1, and there's a load of reasons behind that. But I knew that the 1 member of staff wouldn't have been able to manage the business on her own either. So I was in a very precarious situation, thinking, okay, I'm going to have to close the business. And it was traumatizing for me, because the business, up until I had a child, the business was, I used to call my first baby. And I had the dreams of what I wanted to do with the business, and I could see that getting pulled further and further out of my reach. And then somebody offered to buy the business off me, and that was amazing. It paid for my maternity leave, so it all worked out well in that case. But I did go through a significant period of mourning, because I was mourning the life that I had kind of planned for myself. I was mourning my role as this entrepreneur, and for, I'd say, probably for about 1.5 years, I was in what I would call the wilderness, thinking, I can't be an entrepreneur anymore. What am I going to do? And a friend of mine came and started forcing me to read books. So it was weird, because I just had a baby, sold the business when the baby was like a month or so old, started my MBA when my daughter was 3 months old, and then started a 52 books in a year challenge, which my friend forced me to do, bringing me books every week and saying, you have to read the book. And I always say thank you to him, because he kind of pulled me out of that, I wouldn't say depression, but lost in the abyss kind of phase that I was in. And then I realized my purpose that I thought was so linked to that business is still there. And I don't have to have that business to live a life of purpose. And out of that, Venus Enterprise Consultants, which then became She's the Boss, was born. And I've never been happier in my life. And I feel 100% like I'm doing what I was sent here to do. Now, had I stopped pushing, to bring it back to the lesson, I never would have been sitting here in the situation that I am. I'm making more money. I have the flexible life that I've always wanted, and I'm happy. So the point that I'm trying to make is, sometimes in the middle of the chaos and the trauma and the stress, you may feel that like you want to give up, number one, and you may feel like there's nothing that could be better than what you thought you were going to have. But actually, if you keep pushing, you can find something much better. And all of the lessons, as I said, all of the lessons that I learned, all of the mistakes that I made in the first business has helped me be so much better at running this business. And I've been able to generate so much more revenue in a much shorter period of time than I had in several years of running the first business, simply because now I know exactly what I'm doing. So keep pushing. You're going to come across obstacles. And really, I always say to my clients, business, who told you it was going to be easy? Like, I don't know who gave you that memo. I have clients that say, but why is it so hard? Who told you that it wasn't going to be hard? It's hard. You're going to come against roadblocks. You're going to come against obstacles. If you're anything like me, you're going to want to cry. You're going to want to shout at people. But you have to push past and keep going. And in doing so, that's where you're going to get the breakthroughs. That's where your business is going to start to flourish, if you keep pushing forward. And I love that phrase. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but something along the lines of, if you give up today, the breakthrough was tomorrow, or something along those lines. And it's true. And giving up doesn't necessarily mean, so like in my case, I wouldn't say I gave up because I'm still in business. I just changed direction. So if it's that your business is not working or something goes wrong, don't think that that means you're giving up if you stop doing it. Giving up means stop doing everything. As long as you pivot is the buzzword at the moment, but as long as you restructure and find a new direction, you didn't give up, you kept pushing. And that's what I would say is my final lesson.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're both, as you can see, being as open as we possibly can, because we're not advocating that it's a bed of roses to be running a business. And I know we have some seasoned business owners on the call, so you'll be able to relate to that. There are days when there are dark days. I can remember days where I've thought, pull the shutters down, let's call it a day. Had I given up then and not pushed through, I wouldn't have seen the end. So it's important to share these different aspects of our journeys in business, because some people feel that they're alone. There's a lot of people who will, especially in our industry, paint a really rosy picture and really brand themselves as though life is perfect. And then that can make other entrepreneurs feel that actually I'm doing something wrong. It's important that we have these conversations and share what we've been through. One of the biggest challenges is when you feel like that, and how do you still lead a team effectively? Because if your emotions are showing, you've got to be in a strong position for your team, but being authentic and still being real. And there's a lot of challenges. It takes a real strong-minded person to be an entrepreneur and be able to push through these things. So there's different characteristics, but these experiences build on your character. So yeah, keep pushing, if anybody needs to hear that today.
You can have a look. If you're not, well, I think true, you definitely already are. But for everyone else, if you're not already following us on social media, please make sure that you do so. And this is webinar 1 of 3. So on Thursday, we'll be doing another one at 7 p.m. And I'll send out the Zoom instructions, invite for that to you. And that's going to be around finding your why, so that you're able to build a strong and compelling business vision and vision for yourself. So I look forward to you joining us for that. Melissa, did you want to?
Third one will be a week today, so next week, Tuesday, and that's all around managing your time effectively so you're more productive and you have more success in your business, because that's one of the key weak areas that a lot of entrepreneurs battle with, time management. So that will conclude the series of 3 webinars. So do join us for that too.
Well, and that is the end. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on Thursday.